All right, what is going on, everyone? Welcome. It is Friday, March 15th, and this is going to be your 2024 uSports Men's Volleyball quarterfinal recap. It's a little bit different this year, of course. Quarterfinals went down on Thursday. We got the semifinals tonight, Friday. Saturday is just going to be the B-side bracket matches, and then with the finals still going on Sunday. But yesterday was a fantastic day of volleyball. It was one of my favorite first days of a U-Sport national championship. I don't know why. There was just so much parity, so much going on, and we're going to break it all down. Of course, this is going down at Queen's University in Kingston in Ontario. Funny enough, the first ever national championship I ever attended was 2012 in this same university. Of course, Trinity Western won back then. They beat Laval in the final, and that was a great time. And so far, it's been a great time here. Queens has been a fantastic host. And we've seen some absolutely great volleyball. And we're going to kind of just jump right into some of the results yesterday. You see that, what we've got there on your screen. We're just going to go through them real quick, and then I'll break down all of them one by one. First off, Alberta. This number 2 seed getting the big win over their longtime rivals, Laval. Now, Laval didn't have their top scorer and best hitter, and Nicolas Fortin, due to sickness. We'll talk about that a little bit when we break that game down. But Alberta getting a nice 3-1 win over Laval to get things going. Then we had some upsets today, which was fantastic. UBC, the bronze medalist out of the Canada West, coming in. And I know my friends over in Vancouver and in Kits aren't happy with me calling this one an upset, but let's talk about it. It is, right? The bronze medalist from the Canada West taking down the gold medalist from the OUA. And not to mention, this is a McMaster. This is a perennial powerhouse team. This is a team that is used to leaving at national championships with medals around their neck. And this time, they won't be. And the young team from UBC is moving on. Next up, there was an absolute banger. The home team taking on the defending champs. And if you've ever watched volleyball at the Arc, you know that it's a fantastic play. And Queen shows up. Queen shows up for volleyball, and this one has to have been one of my favorite matches I've ever watched live at a national championship. Just the atmosphere, the crowd, the gameplay going on, it was electric all the way around, and you'll see it there. Yes, Queens did pull off the upset win, and I know the 4-5 game, they're the ranked 4, Queens is ranked 5. Maybe it's not the upset, but let's be honest. Everyone in the volleyball world knows Trinity Western losing in the quarterfinals is massive. That hasn't happened since back to 2014 with the classic 3 bagel situation. And Western back then beat Trinity Western in 2013 and 2014, but still, like, in the past 15 years, they haven't made the semifinals, and like this is only the 3rd time, so that's absolutely massive. And then finally, we wrap things up with Sherbrooke, the number 1 team in the country, still remaining undefeated, taking down Guelph 3-0. And we'll get into that one a little bit later. So let's start it off with the first game of the day, Laval taking on Alberta. And now I was on the call for this match, so obviously I got a pretty good eye of it. And first and foremost, we need to go down to the bottom of this stat sheet and check that last stat line out. Isaac Heslinga was an absolute menace. He's so impressive to watch live. I haven't had too many opportunities to watch him play live. Last year's national championship was really one of the first times, and he didn't show up, right? And it was a bad tournament all around for Alberta. And this time they're here to play. I know I was talking to one of their assistant coaches, Vinny, before, and he was like these guys are locked in. You know, last year it maybe seemed like they wanted the Canada West, and it was just kind of like, okay, let's go see how we do at nationals now. And this year the goal is nationals, and we could tell from this. Heslinga was on another level. He won the Player of the Year at the award ceremony on Wednesday night, and he packs it up with this. It's just absolute monster performance. 32 for 54. He had 34 points. We're not even going to talk about this half-point bullcrap that we do in uSports. I need to talk to someone about it because it's absolutely terrible. Heslinga was really good. He can do things. He plays at another level that I don't think anyone else in this tournament can right now, truthfully and honestly. And then Jacob Sargent as well. He served 2 aces. He was 14 for 22, and he was solid. On Laval's side of things, I mean, they did win that first set. They were down 14-9 at one point and able to claw themselves back just with pure intensity. They were taking care of details. Their ball control was fantastic, and they were playing their offense really low and fast. For the first 2 sets, Laval was actually beating up Alberta in the middle, which is not what I thought was going to be happening with the matchup with Girard and Adi on Laval, and then Johnstone and Weeb for Alberta. But after that first set, you could kind of tell that Alberta was gaining their footing a little bit. They start to get a little bit more comfortable. That's when Sargent started to open things up. And the reality is that Laval didn't have any other game plan to go to. Without Nicolas Fortin, they give him so much volume. They brought in the first year from France, actually, Tarel Chouassi, and he was pretty good from the first set. He stayed confident. He stayed aggressive. In the second, he started to go away from that, try to chop a little bit, and that's when he started to make errors. He finished with 10 kills on 28 attempts. You see it right there. Also 10 errors and 0% efficiency. Max José was really the guy for Laval. He was banging cross court, but they had one game plan, and as soon as Alberta adjusted, it was game over. And at that point, it was just like once Johnstone and Weeb started getting into the game and Sargent, Drybo was really, his offense was really clicking at a certain point, and his thing was making things look easy. It was definitely game over. I know a lot of Laval's fans in the Discord are talking about, if Fortin was there, things would have been different, and I don't disagree, right? He's your top scorer. There's no doubt about it. Ultimately, though, I don't know how much variety in Laval's game they have to be able to. I think they would get that first initial push against Alberta would have been way stronger, of course. But once Alberta pushed back and they started keying in on the fact that Laval's offense was really only Fortin and a little bit of Lausier, I'm not entirely sure, what else would have happened. So ultimately, Alberta was the better team in this one. And they move on. They look very, very good, no doubt about it. And in their semifinal, they're going to be taking on the UBC Thunderbirds. Now, UBC came into this one, and this is a young team. The oldest eligibility they have on their team is third year, right? So this team can come back in full next year, and even potentially the year after that. So that's absolutely massive. And talking to some of their coaches before the game, it was like, hey, we're either going to come at them at full force with everyone on, or we're going to be really up and down and all over the place. And that's kind of exactly what they were. And UBC definitely got better over the game. And I think full credit goes to UBC, especially Mason Greaves. He was named a first-team All-Canadian. He just runs a fantastic offense. Reeve Gengera is really good on the right side. You can see here he went 16 for 29. Not too bad. But for me, the story of the match was really the tale of two polar opposite performances from McMaster's best players. On one side, you had possibly one of the most impressive performances I've ever seen at a uSports National Championship from Max Graton. He finished the game 18 for 27, hitting a 630. And one thing to note, when you're looking at a uSports stat page, that's actually efficiency there. So his efficiency on the match was 630. There was a point in the third, in the second or the third, I can't remember, and I looked at the stat sheet. He was 13 for 14 in high volume too, in out of system situation. They were just chucking things, and he was absolutely automatic. I was calling him King Midas on the broadcast because he was so good, so perfect. But the other side of that has to be Brendan Mills, and you're looking at that minus 85. He was 6 for 27, 11 errors. He got blocked 4 or 5 times. Now, in the first set, UBC started really strong with serving. They jumped up 6-3. McMaster clawed their way back, especially off of Graton. And Mills was still playing good back at that point as well, too. They were down 21-18, and they subbed in, maybe not at that point, but they were down at 21-18, and they subbed in Nick Johnson, who's a lefty, to serve. And he was serving this one-to-one like float serve that was pushing them to the pin, and there's just so much confusion on that right side. And it's that one rotation. You had Brady Patterson on the right side for McMaster and Brendan Mills, and there was a lot of confusion, and that one rotation changed the game completely. 3 or 4 times in a row, they had to go outlet high ball to Brendan Mills on the left side, and he got absolutely shut down 3 or 4 times by James Vincent, who is, funnily enough, his next-gen national team teammate. There's a lot of next-gen guys in this match, so it was a lot of fun. But the game completely changed UBC was able to come back, take that first set 25-22. Like it just turned around completely, but ultimately that completely broke Brendan Mills. He was shut down 3-4 times and he just completely disappeared for the rest of the match. He disappeared in blocking, he disappeared in serving, he disappeared offensively, defensively he was bad. And that one rotation really killed them. Now, McMaster was able to bounce back and take that in, but it was very apparent that, and this is in that second set, that's exactly when Max Graton was unreal. Like I said, like at the end of the second set, he was something like 13 for 14, so just out of this world. But UBC started keying in on the fact that Mills was really struggling and his confidence was shot, which is hard to see because I've always seen Mills, like especially last year, he was just so confident and so poised, and it was really hard to watch him struggle the way that he did yesterday. But I think this is really where the experience of the UBC coaching staff really came into play. I mean, you've got Mike Hawkins, who's with the men's national team, Matt Kruger, who's with the women's national team. I'm going to give a shout out to Gabriel Laku as well, too, because I know he'll get salty if I don't. And you could tell that they were we've got this. Like, they've only got one thing going from them. They weren't connecting in the middle. The right side wasn't there, and their P2 is a first year. I thought Brady Patterson did a really good job. I don't entirely know why they went to bringing in Evan Bremer, but at that point you needed to try something out. I mean, one of the best things that they did was do that complete double sub for Jason Heidbert and Thomas Williams for a bit, but even that wasn't long lived, and you could just see that. Like one of the last points to give the last point, UBC blocked Graton, and that was his first error of the match. And it wasn't even an error, and it was a tough inside low set that he all he could do was swing on, and there was 2 or 3 sets of hands in front of him, and he just landed and deflated because he gave everything he had. And that McMaster team this year just didn't have the things around him like they usually do. And UBC played a really, really good, solid team, great game. Like Gavin Mose, who was solid throughout. He was 9 for 24, ultimately scored 10 points. We saw Nick Johnson, as I said, come off the bench. James Vincent, who was eventually the MVP, was fantastic for 11 points. He was 7 and 8 in the middle, bounced a few balls. But for me, Mason Greaves, the way he runs this offense is just so smooth and so even. It really keeps you guessing. So big ups to UBC. I mean, I know that they didn't really expect to be here. I know even winning the Canada West bronze was big for them over Sask. So yeah, it was a great match. It's too bad McMaster had to lose that way, but hopefully Mills can take that and really use that as fire to move forward, because it was a tough one. All right, this is the one I'm sure you guys all want to talk about. Queens taking down Trinity Western, and this was an absolute. I'm smiling just remembering it. Part of me is sad that I wasn't able to be a part of it and be a part of the broadcast, but I was there. I was talking to people. I was feeling the crowd, and that was amazing. First and foremost, we have to talk about Eric Siskna. Look at those numbers: 21 for 33. He had a 545 efficiency for 21 points overall. He had an ace and a few blocks. This was just a really good game. Queens showed up. It was a packed house, and I know that they were a little bit worried about attendance just because some other things going on in the city, and we know who Queens are and how Queens is and some of their culture. So they had like a hockey game between, it was like engineering and commerce. I think it was, that was sold out, the junior hockey rink, but still sold out place. Great attendance, great vibe, great atmosphere. They definitely had a 7th player on the court. But also to remember that like Queens is the host, but they're the 4 seed for a reason. They're the second best team in the OUA. They're a team that has consistently been at nationals the past few years, and they're very good. Siskna was fantastic. He was unreal. I don't think I'm allowed to tell you guys where he's going to play pro next year, but he's going to a very good team, and he'll be playing in some CEV competitions, which is amazing. The performances that we saw from Heslinga and Graton and Siskna in particular were all incredible. Cisna is also just like a consummate leader for that team, and then that team, I think Gabe Drew has done such a good job at having them be very cohesive, and everyone knows their job. I'll be honest, they run such a high ball offense. I'm surprised that they were able to be so effective offensively, and they got more kills than Trinity and had only a slightly lower efficiency. But ultimately, it was just that first touch for Trinity Western that really hurt them. And I mean the sets that they won, like the first set, they were dominant in serving, and in the fourth set they were dominant in serving. Like if you look at their attacking numbers in the fourth set, they were ridiculous. 14 for 21 as a team. They had 619 efficiency as a team in the fourth. But it just wasn't enough. Rhyme made a few errors down the stretch that just put his hitters in bad positions, and sometimes they had to stay down, and you could tell that they were rattled overall. Trinity Western, and like Queens they were just having one of those games. They truly were. Rempel was pretty good. He was 18 for 36. I will say that he has really come a long way, and he's really taken a step forward. And I know some other people have noticed that as well. Caden Schmidt was all right. He wasn't hurting his team, but he wasn't really making any massive impact plays like I would have liked to see. And I thought Piers DeGrief was really solid, especially as a first year. Went to 14 for 25, hit a 520 for 17 points. I think you also want to give a shout out to Lexon Rabbit. I love watching him play the libero for Queens. He's so smooth. He's just got such a calm head, such a good sense on him. And I know there was a lot of controversy in this one about a few different plays, and I know that there was a serve by Piers DeGrief at 12-12 that Trinity fans thought was in. And I want to confirm that it was. However, before you get your panties in a bunch, a few plays earlier at 11-8 for was it? Yeah, it was 11-8 for Queens. There was a huge kerfuffle at the net where they ended up calling Eric Cisna on the net. And I have the clips. I will put them up on Instagram, and that was definitely Corey Shaunaher all over the net, like elbows resting on the top of the tape, which, first of all, for physicality reasons, that's amazing. But like, it was a bad missed call there by the referee lineup. Usually Andrew Robb, the down referee, would catch something like that, but we'll forgive him. So it was a bit of a tit for tat, right? It was even overall, but ultimately, like, Trinity Western just didn't have that same swagger. They didn't have that same impact player, you know. We know that traditionally they've never really been the best passing team. Their serving was kind of all over the map. Tonight, only 7 aces for this team, and that's not something that we usually see from Trinity Western. And Queens just had the wind underneath their wings, right? They were just uplifted, and they are now 2-0 in national quarterfinals on home court after beating Alberta back in 2012 as well. So big ups to the Queens Gales. Love to see it. You know, let's just get a few new teams. Everyone knows that I'm a Trinity guy. I love the Trinity players. I love their coaching staff. I love their culture in general. I think they've done amazing things for Canadian volleyball and uSports men's volleyball in general. But I like to see a little bit of pizzazz, something a little bit different. Switch it up a little bit. Not to mention the crowd now for Queens Sherbrooke tonight is going to be incredible. All right. Let's wrap up this last match between Sherbrooke and Guelph. This one will just be a quick one, and then we'll get to a bit of a preview for what's to come tonight and moving forward. This one had a chance in the first. I will say it was quite close in the first. There was a couple of chintzy calls at the end of the first. One ball that I and Mr. Dan Lewis and a few other people sitting around us thought was down on the Sherbrooke side that they continued to play. And then there was a phantom touch call in favor of Sherbrooke for a set point. So maybe things that would have been different otherwise, but ultimately Sherbrooke just completely overpowered Guelph. I think Guelph had a few really nice pieces. I really like Johnny Pickett. I really do. He's their best player. He went 12 for 29 for 13 points in this one. Hit a 345, not too bad. But ultimately, when you look at how Sherbrooke plays and their style, Zakarand was really good. Johan David, I know he hasn't really been in the lineup much, was pretty good with 12 kills and 15 points. MVP went to Elliot Carrar in the middle, who went 7 for 10. Just the way that they play was altogether is so dominating. Of course, Portanance runs a really good offense, and they just know each other so well. So that was really the only. It was good for a set and a half, and then it kind of started to get away a little bit, and that was really the only. I wouldn't say stinker because it was still a pretty good match, but that was the only one that was. Luckily, it was at the end of the day too. All right, let's just kind of jump into it right away, and luckily this one's going to be the earlier match at 6 o'clock, I believe. Sherbrooke versus Queens. So I'm going to break them down a little bit and give you a bit of my previews. In my post game interviews and talking to the guys from Sherbrooke about the potential of playing against Queens and playing against what is going to be, if we thought last night was big, I think tonight is going to be even bigger. National semifinal for them against Sherbrooke. Like, it is going to be loud in the Arc tonight, Friday night. There's no other events going on. It's going to be nuts. Every single player from Elliot Carrar, when I was doing the interview with him on the broadcast, to Fethi Ahmed, Patarans, Zakarand, they want that atmosphere. They want that pushback. They play against Laval in a sold out place, in a sold out gym on the regular. Like, they're used to playing in a sold out gym at home. They thrive in that environment. Like, they loved it last year, and I remember them telling me that they wanted to play the McMaster in that environment. That being said, I do think that this is Sherbrooke's still the favorite, no doubt about it. But Queens has a shot. Like, Siskina is going to be the best player on the court. No doubt about that, right? Like, he's hands down going to be the best player on the court. Can they put together consecutive performances like that, though? That's going to be the biggest question. Like, there's a big emotional letdown sometimes after you get a big emotional win. Like, beating Trinity Western is an absolute massive win. There's no doubt about it. Right, like, that's those athletes are going to remember that forever, and they're going to be able to say, like, "Hey, we beat Trinity Western." And it's interesting, after talking with Fethi Ahmed after their win, and he even brought it up. He's like, we saw our own really big emotional letdown after we beat Alberta in the semifinals last year, and then just didn't show up against Trinity in the finals. Like, we know how that feels, so, like, we know how to prepare to move towards that final. But I do think that Queens is really well coached with that whole staff, and they've got the support staff, and they're going to have the crowd behind them. And also, I think the matchup between, like, OUA teams and RCQ teams is sometimes a little bit closer as well, just because there's a little bit of a similar styles. Like, they play at that same level. Like, Laval, part of the reason that their middles were so effective against Johnston and Weeb in the first game was that they were just going underneath, right? And they're hitting that really fast. Well, OUA middles, I find, to tend are a little bit better at that, because that's kind of the level that they play at, whereas the Canada West plays at a little bit higher. So I think this one could be an absolute dogfight. I think you've got a quality coached teams on both sides, and I think you've got guys who can prove themselves. I think the collective of Sherbrooke is a little bit better in the way that they play and their experience and everything. However, but you've got Eric Sisna on the other side. So ultimately, I think we're in for a really good match, right? I think if you're Queens, you understand that you don't really have that much to lose here. You're going against the number one team in the country, but you also have a lot of belief, especially the fact that the only match that Sherbrooke has actually lost this year was an exhibition during Christmas time to McMaster. And, like, I think Queens believes, like truly believes that they are just as good and can beat McMaster as well. And obviously the results kind of lead to that. So, yeah, I think this one is going to be a really good one. I think the support staff for Queens really needs to show up. Like, you really need the rest of those guys. Like, why am I blanking on the Queens guys at the moment? Like, you're really going to need Reed Venning and Ziglichitz to step up around them, especially. Dax Thompson is going to need to have to be solid in the middle, and Chris Zimmerman's going to need to continue running that good offense, but also just keying in on Eric when it needs to. Like, at a certain point, you're just going to need to give him enough, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I want to see there's someone dominant from Sherbrooke needs to step up. I know that Yohan David's not been having the greatest year. Even just watching him, he doesn't look nearly as physical as last year, which really hurts. It sucks because I thought he was so much fun and so physical last year. But it is what it is. I think this one's going to be a really good matchup. I know there's probably some RSEQ fans and maybe some other fans around the country that may not look at Queens as a real contender to Sherbrooke, but man, I really think they are, especially with the way that place is going to be tonight. It is going to be loud, but I also think that a team that loves to play in that environment is going to be Sherbrooke. So, I think it's going to be electric. All right. Finally, the last match to break down and to prepare. We'll do the consolation stuff tomorrow after we do the recap of tonight, just because it isn't until tomorrow. But the last match that we have to talk about, UBC and Alberta. Now, this is going to be very interesting because this is two teams that have played each other 4 times this year. UBC won the season series with 2 3-1 wins. Alberta won the playoffs with 2 3-0 wins. However, UBC was missing some key components in that Alberta semifinal, namely Reeve Gingera, their highest scorer from last night, Logan Greaves, who is their libero and is fantastic, keeps plays alive for them, good in serve receive, good volleyball sense. I mean, he's a Greaves, so he's a volleyball kid. He's so important for them to have out there. And then finally, James Vincent. So you have their highest scorer, their libero, and the MVP from yesterday's match who didn't play in that semifinal series. So I think this is another really, really interesting matchup. Now, they don't have, overall, Alberta doesn't have the talent of UBC, doesn't have the talent of Alberta with guys like Hesslinga and Sargent. There's no doubt about that. They don't have the experience of those Alberta guys just constantly going to finals and national championships and everything like that. But they have a very, very good coaching staff who knows how to game plan, knows how to get things ready, and this is a one-game scenario. Anything could happen out there. So this one's going to be very interesting. I think UBC is going to have to really serve tough. I think that's one of their strengths. I think they would really need to limit some of their errors, and that offense has to be spread around so much because you know that Alberta is going to be so left side dominant. Liam Esposito was like 0% efficiency yesterday, 3 kills, 3 errors. He's going to be a minimal factor for Alberta on the right side. And I mean, hey, if he steps up and is able to drop a big game, like that's exactly what Alberta wants. Because if he starts scoring, you're going to start opening things up. But that middle battle down the middle is going to be so important. So if UBC can keep Alberta off the net and keep Dryborough just setting, and like Dryborough had a hard time getting the ball to the middle early on in the game against Avad yesterday, just because Avad serves so consistently and they don't miss very much, and they were definitely keeping them off the net. So if UBC can do the same and make them become just a high ball team, things could get a little interesting. Obviously, I think Alberta is the favorite in this one. You have to, just with Hesslinga and everything else they've gone on, and especially the more recent history. But this one is by no means a done deal either. I think we're in for a treat. I think we're in for 2 absolute bangers tonight, and I'm excited for it. I will be on the call for the Alberta UBC match, so that's sick. It's going to be dope. And I think I'm going to be on with Ben Plazoda again. And then we'll see what we got going on towards the final. So looking forward to it. Make sure you guys tune in. It's going to be CBC Sports, both on YouTube and on their app. That's going to be at 6 p.m. Eastern for Sherbrooke versus Queens, and then 8 p.m. Eastern or wherever, like 30 minutes after the first match ends, for UBC versus Alberta. Also, like, if you guys look men's volleyball is getting better numbers than like basketball was getting, than hockey was getting yesterday. Like the hockey quarterfinals are going on at the same time, and men's volleyball is outdoing it. So keep watching it. Make sure everyone's tuning in, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. You guys can check me out on the broadcast tonight, or see me with another recap tomorrow. All right, peace.